Welcome to the Best Damn Coach podcast. Today is my favorite guest of all times, and it is my husband joining as we dive into talking about our recent motorhome trip and all the lessons and learnings that we feel like we want to bring to you. So, welcome, honey, to the show yet again.
Thanks, baby.
We're literally recording in two separate rooms so that we can pull the visuals and the audio clearly and distinctly. And we've had lots of tech stuff coming up. So we're hoping third try is a charm right here together. Um, as those of you who have listened to the show before, if this is your first time listening, just to give a little backstory, we set out to take our family on a motorhome trip across the US this summer, and that we did, and we thought it would be really fun. I wanted to come on and share my learnings, and then I thought it would be even more awesome to have him come on because our journeys, experiences, and just learnings from this trip have been entirely different. And it's also helped us kind of rethink a few things as we're coming back into real life. And so here he is today to share perspectives, and we'll tag team and I don't know. We'll just see where the show takes us. But I would love for you to, again, just share what you did and where you are now. That's really given us the flexibility to take this trip together.
Yeah, so I was a police officer for the city of Phoenix. I retired about a year and a half ago, and now I'm kind of full bore into my business, which is Milmac Blades and Copper State Knife Company. So I started making custom knives in 2011, and those businesses have just kind of grown, and it's cool to just kind of put time into them and dive into it a little bit more and really refine the business side of things. And then I'm also a contractor for the U.S. government, teaching tactical response type classes and trainings for various law enforcement agencies here in the US and internationally. Sounds way
Nice.
cooler than it is.
I don't. I disagree with you. It is pretty cool, and you have lots of experience and stories that back that up. So, um, I think that before we talk about even our trip and the learnings, I think that it's interesting because we've gone from both having kind of safe jobs, right? Teacher, I was a teacher, you were a police officer, steady income, consistent income. Not that it was high income, but it was steady. And then you start your business first, really. And so you've got really a little bit of this side income coming in, minimally in the beginning, and then it was like, oh, this business thing's working out. I set off to my business, so we've got me now adding in an income after I've left my business or left teaching. And then now here we are, kind of full blown entrepreneurship. You're 100% in control of the income you bring in. I'm in control of the income I bring in. I mean, to the best that we both can be. But I'm curious from your perspective, just like what are your thoughts about that, or what have you seen change when it comes to that through, I don't know, over the last 10 years of as we've navigated that shift.
I think it's cool because you're in like it may seem like you're in less control because someone is not providing. It's definitely less safe in certain ways because it's not consistent. But I would say like with the way today's economies are and how things are, I think being self-employed is probably one of the safest ways to go because you are able to dictate things and you're able to dictate your level of effort. You're able to dictate kind of what you want to charge, how many hours you want to work, all those things. And I think it's sometimes it may seem hard, but it's really dependent on you. Like if you put the work in and you keep grinding and you keep um, taking like intentional action, like you'll make more money than I think you ever will working for someone else.
Yeah,
So
and
I've really enjoyed it. Yeah.
I think that both of us coming from a, let's say, public servant background, working lots of hours and not necessarily having money to show for it, as much as I think that, especially, I mean, teachers and police officers, I clearly believe, we both believe that are not paid enough, but specifically the risk that you all put forth, the benefit, the money benefit in return is not there. But the interesting thing that I've like really seen, especially over the last year as I've transitioned my business, is it has just always worked out for us when, and this is definitely like a God thing, that when you see peaks and I'm in valleys, right? We offset each other, or when that's shifted, I've been in peaks and you've been in valleys. Don't you think that that's always like that's kind of been the pattern that exists?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of us like is always um, like maybe having a little bit better month or a little bit better year, and when the other one like is having that downtime, like the other seems to pick up the slack and is doing good. And I just think that's kind of how the relationship works and just kind of how like things work out, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So fast forward or rewind, I guess I should say, we had this idea that okay, someday we want to have a motorhome and we want to travel, and COVID didn't really provide us that opportunity like it did many people because it happened to be the busiest, one of the busiest times I would say in your police officer career during that year. It was highly demanding, and
Yeah, there's
so
there's no working there's no working from home during that
yeah,
time. Work
no,
more that
zero
time
for
than
you, more than ever.
yeah.
And so then you end up having the opportunity to leave the department earlier. We kind of thought, well, that's just like a dream when the kids are gone. At some time, you and I will go travel in an RV. And then when all of a sudden the retirement date fast forwarded and we had the opportunity, you had the opportunity to leave, or was kind of presented to you, I guess you could say. Um, Now we can fast forward and be able to take this trip with the kids, and we started chatting about it like, okay, do we want to do this? Like, if we buy a motorhome, this is not a financial investment. This is a memory investment because it's not the necessarily
Yeah, it's not a,
like,
you're not making money. It's not an investment, right? It's like buying a boat. Like that thing is losing money the second you drive it.
yeah. And we also knew that we had this short window of time. The kids are almost 12 and
Yeah.
14, to really capture those memories before they're really like fighting for independence and wanting to do and see other experiences. So we went all in on that, basically on that dream this summer. So will you share just what kind of where like the big picture of what we plan to do?
Yeah, so we had talked about doing just kind of like a month long or 6 week road trip throughout the U.S. And we had kind of gone back and forth on if we wanted to head east and go to the East Coast and like Outer Banks and along the Gulf, or if we wanted to go kind of north and west up to like Yellowstone, maybe like Highway 1 all along through California, Oregon, Washington, that kind of direction. And we end up settling on the East Coast just for something different. We do West Coast beaches pretty often, so we end up changing it up and going out east.
Yeah, so we left Arizona, headed through Texas, uh, hit basically the coastline there, into Port Aransas, then to probably not in the right order, as I remember, Louisiana, Mississippi, um, Alabama, Florida, South Carolina, North. Am I saying it right?
You're doing
Did I
pretty good,
forget
yeah.
some things?
Way better than you're navigating on the trip. So yeah,
Okay, fair enough. That was not my strong suit. Uh, our furthest distance was the Outer Banks, which was our whole family's favorite, and then we made our way back through Carolina, Tennessee, and a whole bunch of states like that. We kind of Oklahoma, I guess, New Mexico. Fast forwarded a little bit quicker on the journey. But there was a lot of learnings, including that my navigation was not on point, especially when you're driving a 40-foot motorhome and GPS does not tell you small streets, narrow streets, and I definitely don't know how to decipher. So that was a pain point for Justin because I would often lead him into these tiny streets, and I did 0 miles of the driving. He did all 6,000 plus miles of the driving through 12 states. So that was definitely part of learning. But I want to share like our learnings that we are bringing back from the trip that have maybe shifted the way we're doing life now. So, what for you is the biggest learning that you're bringing back as we're back at home now and still navigating summer with the kids?
yeah. So for me, the hardest thing I think it just truly learning to slow down. Like I think my life has been at like such a fast pace for so long. Um, Working for the police department, like working shift work, constantly getting called out, constantly going to things. Everything has just always been like in a like hurry up and get things done fashion. So like to be gone for like a month and um, have a little bit of work here and there. Like I was shipping knives and doing some kind of behind the scenes stuff, helping like work on a website, had some meetings for some other things. But just really like slowing down, like that was hard. That was hard for me. Like that was like not a normal thing.
What specifically do you feel like was hard about it?
I don't know. I think it's for me, like as a guy, I feel like sometimes, like if I'm not busy, if I'm not providing, if I'm not fixing something, if I'm not like doing something to move our family forward, I feel like I'm wasting time, right? Like I feel like I'm not taking advantage of opportunities or taking advantage of what I should be doing. And I feel like sometimes that like I'm just truly like not doing my job as a man.
Mm.
So
I don't
that was hard.
I mean, I witnessed you do that, those moments where we were doing nothing and you were restless. And I was like, okay, you're restless. I can see you're up and moving. I also think, though, that mindset isn't much different for women. It's just different things. And the way you provide or in your brain that you should be providing for our family is different than the way women may think that they should be providing, right? It's like the doing, the task, the home chores, particularly where I think your vision of providing is the work, the financial resources, like what does it take, manual labor stuff as well. So if
Yeah,
you're enjoying this, like the story is, we can't take this time. Like this is not what normal people do, right? Regular people don't get to leave their house, go on a trip for a month plus with their kids and do whatever they want. I mean, that's just not common.
they choose not to. It's not that they
I
don't
would
get
agree with
to.
you.
Like
Yeah.
you make choices on what you want to do. It just depends on how much you can sacrifice and how much you're willing to sacrifice. Like I think we're in a good place. Like we're in a much better place financially. Like better than we have ever been. We've been super blessed in that regard. Um, but we've also like been in bad places, and we could have made it happen then. We just chose to wait. So I think that's like an interesting thing, right? Like um, I think we thought we couldn't do it for a long time, but like I think we could have made it work 5 years ago. It would have been a lot
Hmm.
harder. Like it would have been hard to get time off at work. It would have been hard to figure those things out. Um, but it's just always willing. Like what are you willing to sacrifice to get up? Like how are you prioritizing? What's the most important thing? And for us, it
Yeah.
was a time where we could do it, and it was important enough to make the trip, and we were able, so we did it.
Yeah. I agree with you there. It's a good perspective, or a good reframe around it too. Is for me, one of the things that I want to share that was a really huge learning is um, my whole family probably laughed at me the last week because as we were like headed home, I would just cry. And it was
Cry, like
just,
constantly crying on the way home.
I was
Miller,
crying a lot.
Miller's right here, and he's laughing. He's just staring at me creepily.
A- and I was crying because I just didn't want it to end. And I was kind of shocked how much emotion was coming about the end of the trip. And I started journaling often, like, why is this? Why is this? And I think that Justin and I recently saw this statistics of ours, and I don't know how this is measured. So take this with a grain of salt, but I still think there's some, validity to the perspective. But it was something like, and hun, you correct me, but by the time your child is 18 years old, you will have spent like 75% of your time that you have with them. Is that what it was?
So by 12 years old, 75% of the time you'll spend with your child has passed. By 18, you're at 90% is what the stat said. I don't know if that's true. Like I would think so. Like it seems probably pretty legitimate, right? Like by the time they're 12, that's probably when sports or activities start kicking in. So they're going to be gone a lot more for practices. By the time they're 18, they're out of the house. So like you just got to think about that. Like even if you see your parents for 2 hours every week, right? Um, like that's not even a half of a percent of a week. I don't
Yeah.
think, right? I don't know. I'm not doing the math
No,
right off the top of my
you're
head,
probably
but
right. Mhm.
um, that's 15 minutes a day out of 24 hours. Like that's not even like a half of a percent. So if you add that up over time, like the times you have are precious, especially summers. Like we talk about that all the time, right? Like one of our friends told us that you get 18 summers. Like that's what you get with your kids. but they have to be with you, where they don't have a choice. You gotta hold them hostage a little bit and be like, no, you can't go with your friends. You're coming with us this summer. But after that, it's kind of up to them. So I think just taking advantage of those moments and and understanding like how quick it is and like how short it is. Like you always we've talked about it. Like you always think about like what your parents always said. Oh, it goes so quick, and you're like, oh, that's just something old people say. And now we're here, and we're like, ah, it goes
Oh,
so
we're the
fast.
old people saying
Like it
it.
goes
Yeah,
really,
for
really
sure.
fast, right?
Yeah.
We
So
are.
the
You're old. You're crying in an RV. A motorhome
it's true. It was funny
qualifies
though,
it.
because as we were motorhoming, we just didn't really meet couples our age because everybody was so older. And so, I mean, that
Not
was exciting.
motorboating, motorhoming.
Motorhoming. I said motorhoming.
I know. I'm just joking.
And that was sad for me too, is how many people wait their whole life to have these experiences instead of being able to enjoy life. Their choice again, but part of that is like breaking through the belief system around that it not being a choice. But going back to, for me, the tears were just, it was multitude of things. It was tears of gratitude for just prioritizing this and just making it happen, and but also that I just loved the space. I mean, we were confined to a very small space, literally moving around the motorhome. Like we're all there together constantly. It was lots of board games every night, every meal together. Everything was together. And I just felt so full the entire time. And so as things were winding down, I had realization we're going to come home and then like life's going to happen again, right? Activities are going to start. We're going to be pulled in different directions. The kids are going to want to spend time with their friends. We're going to want to spend time with each other. We're going to want to spend time with friends. And so I really started asking myself, but what about the time? And I think the time being together, yeah, that's just like so valuable, but it was very intentional. We didn't have chores pulling us. We really didn't have business pulling us. And so that's one of the things I kept sharing with Justin was, how do we keep coming back and recreating this? Like, what are we going to do so that we carve out the space? So I think one thing that you and I are both aware of is like we are setting a little harsher boundaries around things, or trying to be giving the kids freedom, but also like holding sacred some of that space. So they're not, you know, uh, I don't know, like saying no to more things when it comes to sports. The kids don't have to be at everything. Like we can say
Yeah.
no to things first off. um, but the second piece to that for me is beyond that, just when we are together, is being more present in that, just the
Yeah.
conversations, the shutting things down, quieting the external environment. I think we're pretty cognizant of that already, but for me, being on the trip only amplified that desire.
No, for sure. I think it forces everything to be more efficient because you have more time, but we're trying to be limited on like when we're doing other things, right? So when we were working or we're doing responding to emails or doing stuff, like we're trying to get it done in a super efficient manner. So I think that was huge because it showed, I think for you especially, like how much you could get done in a short amount of time and like things were gonna still be okay. And then I think like you get rid of a lot of excess, right? Like you don't have to you're not you're not getting ready and driving 20 minutes to the gym to work out, to drive 20 minutes home. You lose 40 minutes there. You're not going to practices where you're losing a couple of hours. You're not doing those things. And anything we were doing, we were all together, right? Like you're getting 3 meals a day together. I don't think there's not a lot of families that probably eat one meal together every single day, let alone three. So for that whole month, like it's awesome. I think it was like it's super precious time, and I think it was just eye opening to do it. But I think you also have to be realistic. Like you can't always be that way. Nor do I think you want to be that way, right? Like I think you want your kids to be out and have friends and socialize and be around and be in other activities. And we need that. Like right, we didn't have a date night for a month. Which is not normal for us. Like we are very consistent with our weekly date nights. So not having any of that time is also like a thing you just think about, right? Like you just
Yeah,
it brings it
perspective.
into your perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that went through my mind too is that realization of, our daughter's almost 14. We have 4-ish summers till college starts too. He's trailing not far behind. So essentially 6 years from now, it could be that you and I are on vacation consistently together. That's not to say, I mean, I hope that the kids go on vacations when they have families and we get to still have that, but you and I are still going to have that consistent time together. Right. And so it also made me really cherish the moments that we were enjoying together. Like I started to see myself in the future of like I could totally repeat this trip, you and I. And then I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
couples that get lost in parenting, and it's so easy to do. Like all the eggs go in the basket of the child, and then the relationship, the marriage goes on the back burner, right? There's no dating, there's no dreaming, there's no hard conversations, there are none of those things. And for
Yeah.
me also being on this trip was that reminder of like in our future there will be the two of us, and our children may come and go out of the home as they get older, whatever that is, but like it's just us. So I better really like you and you better really like me. So just being able to carve out like one of my favorite moments on the trip was actually without the kids. They were out like riding their bikes in one of the RV resorts, and it was in Myrtle Beach. I don't know if you remember that evening. For me, it was really special, but it was kind of overcast and it was like light drizzle. We put on our swimsuits to go read at the beach. We had a cocktail, and it was just the two of us for a moment too. And it was like, the kids are like loving spending time together because it's equally important that they not be around us the whole time. I think that's one of the things that we came home also realizing too is like they need to bridge their and build their relationship independent of mom and dad, always
Yeah.
creating it for them too.
No, for sure. I think it's great. Like they had an awesome time together. It gets them some chance to bond and talk about some stuff that is going on, whatever that may be that they can talk to each other about. But I think yeah, for us to have the time and we're showing them what's important. Like what do they want out of a marriage, out of a spouse? Like how do they want it to look like in their future, right? Do they are we telling them that like no 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 you have to be just completely obsessed with your child, everything is dependent on them, like the spouse gets pushed to the side, it's all about them? Or are we telling them that like hey, like your spouse is super important, like you have to take care of them because if you just go back to the whole time thing, like you have your kids maybe in your home for 18, 22 years, maybe a little bit longer depending on circumstances, but um, we're going to have hopefully lots of years once they're out of the house together, and we want those to be good years, not just like reconnecting because we're strangers. So
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I want to keep going off of something you said though about the productivity piece because that was a huge realization for me. And you mentioned you even saw it in me. Something that I struggle with when we're at home is it's interesting because you thrive more in routine, and so does our daughter. They were both probably like over it and ready to come home faster than our
I
son
was
and
over
my
fixing
true.
shit that kept breaking.
Okay, so we definitely had Justin jokes that he got an apprenticeship in RV repair through the process because he did. That was the hard part for him. I think it held him back for sure from enjoying it as much because he was doing the driving, just because weather and like road stuff felt better and safer for him to drive. And then there was stuff that went wrong, which is inevitable. We just happened to have a larger amount of stuff go wrong than I think the average bear. So he was fixing a lot of stuff. But it's interesting though because I felt like when we were gone, like time was non-existent. Like I didn't feel it late. I didn't feel that it was late when it was like 11 or midnight. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, like we got to get up. It was like it was almost like we were in this time warp. But it wasn't time. It was my mind around time. Like I gave myself the freedom to not be so rigid on time. And like I got to wake up and I got to go. And I realized I could thrive like that. And I think that for me was very freeing, and I feel like I'm bringing it
Yeah.
home now because when the kids want to stay up and watch a movie with me, it's okay. They're like, "Mom, stay up and watch a movie," and I stay up till 11 or something. It's okay. Like I'm not getting that time back, and I think there is so much rigor for me personally
Yeah.
around that. But what I realized was the time I have is the time I will take. There were times where we were at RV resorts and we had stuff planned, and I had no Wi-Fi in the RV. I had to go ride my bike somewhere to get Wi-Fi, and I had 2 hours to get stuff done. And so I like went to work. And that's been the question I've been asking myself a lot is how do I bring that back, and how do I prioritize better and close, I don't know, like make those pockets, I don't know, more intentional is the word I
It's
guess.
just efficiency, I think, right? Like you have to when you know you have set time blocks, like if you knew every day here that you could only work on your business from 8 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. Like that's all you had. You had 3.5 hours every day. That's it. Like that 3.5 hours is going to be your most important stuff that you're going to prioritize the most, and you're going to be extremely efficient with that because that's what you know you have. And I think sometimes when we're at home, you you just don't treat it that way because you don't have to, right? You can be like, okay, like for me this morning, like I got up, I worked on some knives, I came back in, I did some stuff on the computer, I went to the gym, now we're doing this. So you're not necessarily always prioritizing like your highest leverage stuff and making sure that gets done. You can fill a lot of time with busy work if you want to, and they seem super super busy, right? Like, oh, I spent
And
10
important.
hours. Yeah, I spent 10 hours on my business today. Well, like, cool. Like, what's the ROI on that? Like, was that a super important 10 hours, or could you have spent 3 hours and done the stuff you really needed to do? And I think that's, in my opinion, that's what kind of the trip showed you was like, hey, you can't do that all the time, right? But like, I think it showed you that like, hey, you can really leverage time and really like be intentional and really be super efficient in short blocks of time and get the stuff done you need to get done, versus like feeling like you have to be in the office at 5 in the morning till 3 in the
Mhm.
afternoon with a
Yeah,
half
and for
hour break to fuel that bod.
yeah, he knows. Stop it right now. He knows in my calendar I have a little 30-minute lunch break in there that says fuel that bod so that nobody books over my calendar and I can make sure I eat every day. um I mean, I think I thought I think I am a highly productive person, and I take action, and those things are all true. It's just then I started asking myself, how do I do this even in less time? How can I? Because the trip was a testament that I could. So how do I
Yeah.
bottle that up and repeat that essentially?
Hmm. Yeah, 100%.
What was your favorite part of the trip?
Um, gosh, I don't know. I think Hatteras was awesome in the Outer Banks. Like that was my favorite place, I would say. Favorite parts, I think just like playing games at night, even if you guys were messing with me. Um, and then I love the early mornings, like just getting up and driving. Kids are still sleeping, having some coffee, seeing the sunrise while we're driving. The kids are waking up, like coming to say hi. Like I think those moments are just awesome. I really appreciated those.
Yeah, me too. And the only other thing I would say is our day at Dollywood was definitely a well, like a surprise, like a super fun day that we didn't intend to
Yeah,
do that ended up being super fun for all of us.
yeah. And we didn't get motion sickness. I don't know if any of you other people watching, listening, like I had gotten some. I never used to get motion sick until I got older, and now I get motion sick. But I was at Dollywood and I did not, and I think it's because it was all like actual roller coasters. Well, first we took Dramamine, so Amanda was like
Which
falling
we did at
asleep.
Disneyland and I still got sick. So
Yeah, but I think it's the difference in like the actual coasters versus like kind of like the VR like screen kind of rides that with
indoor, yeah.
the integrated screens. I think that's what makes me sick for sure.
Yeah, the fresh air, you get the fresh air the whole time on the
Yeah,
rides.
so for sure. But
Amazing.
I
I
think
mean,
that those were awesome parts.
yeah, I echo all of that too, and I think the kids do as well. One, I guess, thing that I want to sidestep, because a lot of people listening, and we've talked about this before on the show, but I think it's worth mentioning, is a lot of coaches listening may feel that they're in maybe a relationship where they're trying to step into the identity of being an entrepreneur. Maybe they're leaving a 9 to 5, this is a side hustle, they want it to be their main thing, or it's their main thing, and they don't necessarily have a partner that gets it, right? They don't understand what it's like to take this amount of risk, to put yourself out there, to all the stuff that comes with the internal growth around entrepreneurship. I'm curious if somebody's listening and I have a primary, female audience, what do you say to that? Like, what kind of tips or words of advice would you offer them?
I would say like have like a real legitimate conversation with them about like what you want to do, why you want to do it. And I think it's got to be smart choices too. Like if you're really struggling with finances as a couple and you bring in like a good amount of income and you just want to quit and like do your own thing, like probably not the best timing, right? Like you can work on your own thing while you're still at your job and build it up and grow and sacrifice. And yeah, it's going to take more time. And I think maybe that sometimes is the misconception is like, hey, you can't do both, or like, oh, I don't want to work at my normal job and then come home and work on this also, like that's a lot of time. I'm going to miss out on these things. And then I would also say like we've talked about it before. It's about like past experiences. Like if 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 you've come to me a bunch and told me like I want to try this new thing, um, and we invest money in it and we try it and you don't follow through, and then you come to me and hey, here's a new thing, and you want to invest money and you try it and you don't follow through, um, then you have got to have like a real honest conversation about that on both sides, saying, hey, like I know I didn't follow through on those things, or I know I didn't like. I know we spent a bunch of money for me to try to do this and it didn't work out, and that's on me, but this is something like I'm super passionate about. And then you have to follow through. Like you have got to put the work in, or put the work in on the beginning, and like show your spouse like, hey, you're serious about it, right? Like I don't think um like if I would have gone out and just bought like a $60,000 CNC machine like day one of knife making, you would have been like, what are you doing? Like this makes no sense. But I didn't do that initially. I made knives for 10 years and then I bought that machine because I've showed you that I'm like actually building a business and it's working and it's moving some stuff. So I think a lot of that comes into play, and just having honest conversations like, hey, like we got married, like we said we're going to support each other. Like I support you in your job, you should support me in mine. But I'll also say this too, like you got to have the understanding for maybe like some of the wives, like your husband might not have his dream job. Like it might not be what he wants to do, but he's doing it and he's busting his ass and he's getting up early and he's providing for you and his family, for you and your family, and he's really working hard doing that. And he might not like love what he does, but he's doing it anyway. So I think like having that conversation, and even if you know that's the case, like talking to him about that. Hey, like I know this isn't your ideal job, but I really appreciate what you do, like how hard you work for us. And I want to try this because I'm really interested in it. I think it's good. And I think eventually, like I can build it to give us some freedom and then maybe get you to be able to do some stuff you want to do. Because I think a lot of times like I've heard that from guys that I've coached or talked to or worked with also, is like that's that's sometimes a point of contention. Like their wife will come to them and they want to start this business because they're like, this is my calling. I love doing it. And they're like, dude, I've been working at this same job for the past 18 years and I don't like it. I got to be to work at 6 in the morning. I get home at 6 p.m. I take the kids to practice. And this is not when I was a 15, 20-year old young boy man. Like, this is not what I wanted to do, but I'm doing it because it's providing for my family and it's giving them the opportunities. So just having that conversation and understanding like, hey, you want to chase a dream? Like, but maybe they're not in their dream position either. So maybe they have dreams to chase too, and just have those conversations, like reconnect in those ways and be open about it, I think is super helpful.
Yeah, I think that like making that space to talk and even giving each other the permission to share, like, what are you dreaming about? And not getting lost in the show, the children, the whatever, if you don't have kids, whatever, just doing life. But understanding that, opening the doors to communication to know what are each other's dreams, and being able to articulate what the give and take of that is in that season of life, I think is a major starting point. So thank
Yeah,
you for reiterating that. Thank
of
you for
course.
hopping on with me and being open to my craziness as always, and just sharing from your perspective. Is there anything else I didn't share or that I should have, or anything that you want to
Don't buy a motorhome. Yeah, don't do it. No.
add? Ignore him. If that's your dream, go, go. Just know
No, it
that
was
there are.
great. I wouldn't that actually like super amazing trip. We just got I think we got a little bit of like a lemon or something that required a lot of fixing. But no, like
And we're
go
not
do the
letting
things you
it,
want.
yeah, we're not letting it ruin our amazingness. But I mean, also, like, I sugarcoat it here. I mean, it was a beautiful trip, but there were also moments where we were definitely sick of each other. We needed space. We were like, okay, was this a good idea in the moment? And then, of course, you take the contrasting feelings too. And it was just for me really interesting to see how each personality in the family operated differently, and to just keep the dialogue rolling about it, like letting the kids share, like, this is not working for me, this is, or sharing how they
Yeah.
were feeling too, because everybody had their own experience for sure.
Yeah, but it was great. I think it's yeah, something that like just having like whether it's a motorhome or like something to be able to just go and be with your kids, especially at this age for a month is like amazing, and not have to have other commitments is pretty like it's a like such a blessing. Like so make those things happen if you can.
Well, thank you. Love you.
Love you. I'll see you in a second.
Okay, perfect.